See this? This was a Caltrops only run. I began recording it back in March of 2023. I thought about coming back to it because it's been just over a year. However, after 2 hours of just an absolute slog, I changed gears. Not to the video you're getting today, but to a Sekiro at level 1 video. However, then Bethesda dropped the news that the Fallout 4 Next Gen update would be coming out on the 25th of April, and knowing that it was going to just break every single mod, I figured I should probably rush getting some footage for a couple of modded Fallout 4 runs that I've been working on in my spare time. Mainly because there is a possibility that some of these mods might never get fixed if their authors have went on to do something else. All of that would mean that you probably wouldn't be getting a video for quite a while. So that is finally where today's run comes in, as I figured it would be something a little easier and possibly shorter, so at least this way there shouldn't be an exceptionally large gap between uploads. Plus, the New Vegas rolling pin run has been getting a weird amount of traction lately, probably all to do with the success of the show, I'm aware, but regardless, it felt like a good time to revisit the idea in Fallout 4. It's a rather bog-standard set of rules, as you're no doubt aware. I can only use the rolling pin in combat, meaning I am defenseless until I can find one. I ended up tossing in some of my own bonus stipulations, not rules I had to follow per se, but just things I wanted to do to make things a bit more fun. Now with all that out of the way, let's begin. Just like the New Vegas run, since this whole idea essentially spawned from the Mods Muggers event in that game, I will adhere to the spirit of that encounter by playing as a girl today. Many people made the jokes last time of how I should have doubled down on the thumbnail and made Muriel from Courage the Cowardly Dog as my main character. Well, truth be told, the thumbnails are always the last thing that I do for these videos, so the thought hadn't even crossed my mind until that point. So today I will appease you. I even went one step further and attempted to make Nate look like Eustace. The designs aren't really complete without somewhat appropriate clothing and glasses, but we can fix that for ourselves later. Obviously, Nate's fate is sealed, so out of curiosity I looked it up, and someone did in fact make a very convincing Eustace character thanks to the goggles and flat cap. As this run is going to be all about the rolling pin, it made sense to spec into a normal melee build with high strength and endurance, with a little bit of luck and agility on the side. I know more agility could be useful for the Blitz perk, but that doesn't become really good until you get its second upgrade, which increases its damage. And that is not available until you reach level 29, and let's be real with ourselves, even with good idiot savant procs, that's not going to happen. To the vault, and things are as bright as ever. The only minor hiccup is Nate tries to escape the vault with a baby, but fortunately Cornflakes puts a stop to that. Out of the freezer, and like any good restricted run, I just dart past all of the roaches, stopping only to grab some healing supplies. I lock them all behind the doors, and then I just wait out the clock for them to eventually lose interest so they don't want to consume my toes. Alright, back to the surface, and first things first, it's time to arm ourselves. Like many weapons, the pin of course has a chance to randomly spawn in a few locations or containers across the entirety of the Commonwealth. That said, I'm leaving nothing to chance, so we'll be heading to one of surprisingly only 2 areas that have a guaranteed rolling pin. They are Vault 81 and the Sandy Coves Convalescent Home. Vault 81 made the absolute most sense because it's very close by to the south, and in a relatively danger-free area. So why am I heading east? Simple really, to get into 81 you need 4 fusion cores or a high enough speech check, both of which I do not have. I could save scum to pass the check, or just go looting for a few easy to grab fusion cores, but ultimately I decided against it. No real strategic reason as to why, I kinda just wanted to go to the old folks home and do things this way, spice things up a little. Well, the journey east was relatively easy going all things considered, the only minor concern was the deathclaw I bumped into. If it got me, I would have been dead, no doubt about that. Thankfully, they are stupid and shockingly easy to avoid, so no problems there. I passed by Leonard just before making it to the home, and I don't really have any caps to do any worthwhile trading just yet, so I leave him for now. Truth be told, other than him being the earliest consistent source of 44 rounds for the revolver, I don't actually know what else he has in stock. I can check back later. For now, we arrive at the home, and after a quick search, we find the rolling pin. Sadly, we only have it for a few seconds before some high-level synths kick down the door and demolish us. Second try, and I rush through and grab the pin straight away, as the synths seem to be on a set timer before they enter the building. For good measure, I also managed to procure some rather fitting attire. Not exactly one-to-one to the show, but I like the big circular glasses, okay? Once again, the synths popped in for a wellness check right as I was preparing to leave. It would have been a repeat of before, if not for the dose of jet I was able to find in one of the residents' rooms, With it, I could slow down time and quickly shimmy between them to the exit and make my way outside, only slightly worse for wear. I'm not sure if they can follow me outside because I didn't stick around to find out, as the instant the game loaded me in, I fast travelled back to Sanctuary. First things first, it's time to see the rolling pins upgrade so we can find out what we have to work with. It might come as a surprise, but I've never once even thought about using the rolling pin in Fallout 4, so I will admit I was shocked, albeit in a good way, when I found out that you have access to all of its upgrades right from the get-go. Meaning, I don't have to waste up to 3 levels putting points into the blacksmith perk. Granted, my only options are making it metal instead of wood based, and then whether I wanted to do bleed damage over time or have a higher armor penetration. Not complaining, mind you, just making you all aware that while good, there aren't a lot of options. I of course go for the aluminium upgrade, as there is no reason not to, and then for the second choice I took the bleed effect. From what I remember, everything, even robots, take bleed damage in Fallout 4, plus it stacks, so there's no real downside to this. With a fully upgraded weapon this early, there is really no more prep required, so I rushed down to Concord to free the Minutemen by dealing with the raiders. Unsurprisingly, the Pin of Death inflicts a sizable amount of damage. Makes sense. Have you ever been hit with a rolling pin before? I have. It's kinda just like getting hit with a baseball bat, only faster. The plan was to side with the Minutemen today. It's been a while, plus I sided with the Brotherhood too many times at this stage. I really don't feel like assaulting the airport with a baking utensil for the Institute, and we all know my feelings on the railroad by now. However, tragedy struck after I dealt with the raiders and approached the museum. It doesn't seem like anything is broken, but Preston refuses to acknowledge me and doesn't give me the prompt to take the laser musket. So this can completely break the later half of the quest, seemingly because this is tied to the trigger of him recognizing the first wave of raiders are outside. If he doesn't do this, then the second wave and the Deathclaw won't spawn in after you get the power armor. I figured that maybe I could fix this by fast travelling back to Codsworth and going through things how you would normally do on a first run, by searching Sanctuary with him and then following his instructions to check the nearby town. Turns out that won't work either, as while ButlerBot enthusiastically tells me to follow him around Sanctuary, he never actually budges an inch. Trying to speak with him again also does not work. Alright, so I bite the bullet and just enter the museum and get to clearing out the raiders inside. Again, just as simple and straightforward as their friends outside, so no issues on that front. I am able to converse with Preston and Sturgis about the plan with the armor, yet whenever I go outside and even momentarily equipped and grab the minigun, the raiders once again refuse to spawn. Let's just cut this short. I loaded back a few times and tried a few different solutions and nothing worked. So I just continued on the generalish direction of Diamond City like normal. That means the Minutemen are out of the picture permanently again. This has happened pretty frequently in my last few runs. Here's hoping that update on the 25th fixes it. Future Nerbit here, it actually did. On my way towards Wolfgang for some of the absolute easiest quest XP, I end up getting attacked by a rad scorpion. It's manageable, don't get me wrong. I just didn't expect to get jumped by one this early on. That really is the saving grace for melee builds in Fallout 4, isn't it? Being able to cancel it at the push of a button really helps in speeding up melee combat by seamlessly comboing it into your normal attacks. It's also just quite useful due to my current lack of armor, although that's just up to me being stubborn. With that in mind, my first few perks outside of Idiot Savant are likely things like Rooted and Toughness, along with your run-of-the-mill melee perks like Big Leagues, of course. Sure, I'm going to be severely lacking in energy resistance for the time being, what with my low perception locking me out of the Refractor perk. That said, there is a workaround for that. Sadly for me, it involves helping the railroad. Gross, I know, but we all gotta do things we don't like at times. Besides, with the Minutemen refusing to really exist along with my previous runs with the Brotherhood, the railroad is literally my only option left to make the teleporter, so like it or not, we have to make nice. Before heading for the church to beg forgiveness from those I have sinned on so many times in the past, I figured it couldn't hurt to get a few more levels under my belt. Mainly, I wanted at least 2 more. That way, I could increase my charisma to 3, allowing me access to the Black Widow and Lone Wanderer perks. One's great for damage and one's great for defense. In other words, pretty valuable all things considered. Nothing fancy for how I went about sucking up the XP. Really, I just hit up your local raider outpost that you would normally end up clearing out during a normal bog standard Minuteman run. It's early game still, so the raiders in and of themselves prove little trouble. The only real minor hurdle was dealing with turrets, specifically some of the ones near Jared in the assembly plant. They tear through my dress in just a few shots, plus they are kinda hard to reach what with the whole rolling pin thing. After a few more unceremonious deaths, I just say to hell with it, and after bludgeoning Jared into next week, just up and leave before they can turn me into Swiss cheese. Following the oh-so-familiar path, I roll over a few ghouls in Cambridge, ignore Paladin Dance's cries for help, and end up at the Pirate Raiders and engage in some boarding action. Everything goes very well. Even the one-on-one against the Raider in power armor is a shockingly short fight. That said, he gets the last laugh as I was completely unaware of his build and failed to realise that he had martyrdom. With no time to outrun the exploding egg he just laid, my limbs are promptly popped off my torso. Next try and the same thing happens again, only this time I am quick enough to hide behind the numerous shipping containers and shield myself from the blast radius. I'm gonna be real, I have never seen a normal raider do that outside of that one dude who leads the Forged, and spoiler alert, just about every single enemy who I come across in power armor in this run starts crapping out fusion cores like it's going out of style. Why, I do not know, but it certainly made dealing with the Brotherhood interesting. But we will get to that later. For now, it's back to the slaughter as I hit up and knock down Hangman's Alley, as well as Hubris Comics. The last one was just for fun. Sure, Groknak's outfit would have been beneficial, but I have a whole run wearing that thing, so it gets left behind today. After that, I fought Swan, went about as well as you might think, and then I popped into Good Neighbor for some healing supplies. Well, that was the initial plan. Instead, I ended up leaving with a second rolling pin after I noticed that Cleo was selling one. I immediately head back to Sanctuary to give it the metal treatment, and then to cover all my bases, I give this one the armor penetration upgrade. I also christened them Bleedy and Breaky at this stage, so that I could quickly tell them apart in the Pip-Boy. After that, a few more nothing encounters, and blah 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 blah, I begin working with the Railroad. That means it's on to Tradecraft, always a great time when you have zero energy resistance, I can assure you. I end up burning through a lot of my healing supplies here, although to be fair, I kind of expected that to be the case. Getting through the hordes of synths just required a lot of stopping and starting, as I made careful use of VATs to soak up as much damage as possible. It's not a foolproof plan by any means, still get put in my place more than a few times. However, as much as I hate to admit it, the best way to eventually deal with this glass bones and paper skin situation, and still let me rock this dress, is in fact by continuing to help the Railroad not suck as much. Once me and Deacon grab the MacGuffin, we quickly make our way through the final few synths and back to the church. Despite my best efforts, now that I am part of their clubhouse, the group forces me to come up with a cool nickname for myself. I tell them I really do not care, so they just call me the Wanderer instead. Now that I am officially a member of the Choo Choo crew, I can get to work with some more tasks. The one I want is to of course locate the supply cache for Pam, but I figured I'm here and could do with the extra XP, so I take some time out of my day to help Old Man Stockton and High Rise deliver a sentient mannequin 5 minutes down the street. A couple of raiders get in the way, but we quickly roll over them with no real setbacks. Back at the clubhouse, I pick up the mission for Pam to locate the cache, and as luck would have it, this time it is decided to spawn inside Medford Memorial Hospital. If that name sounds familiar to any of you, well, that's probably because it's one of the most likely locations you can be sent to for the Brotherhood when looking for parts for Liberty Prime, assuming you don't just buy them like a sane person. The problem is that it is filled to the brim with super mutants, specifically the variety that likes to engage in explosive handshakes. It doesn't take a genius why I don't want to deal with them when all I have at my disposal is an incredibly short-range dough flattener. The plan was to rush them down and then just hope to God I could stun them for long enough in VATs to stall out their animation and kill them before they had a chance to blow. Well, turns out I was overcomplicating all of this, as it seems that so long as you're in VATs, you can just tank one of their explosions no problem. In fact, I did it twice, just to flex. The rest of the super mutants get clobbered rather easily I might add, and now I could finally up my defense. Because, as most of you know, doing this first mission for Pam unlocks the ballistic weave upgrade for normal clothes. I've already prepared for this by looting and selling just about every single weapon and piece of armor I've come across up to this point, which got me more than enough caps to purchase a shipment of ballistic fiber from Cleo and Good Neighbor. I am also level 13, FYI, which also means I can immediately upgrade my dress with the Mark III version of the weave. All in all, this puts me at a physical and energy resistance of 65 thanks to this armor upgrade alone. Keep in mind, I also have a few ranks in toughness for more physical damage negation, as well as the first rank in the Lone Wanderer perk for an overall 15% decrease in all forms of damage so long as I remain lonely. To test out my defenses, I went and slaughtered the raiders at Backstreet Apparel. Seems a bit random, but in actuality I had two different quests for the place. One to rescue a hostage for the settlers at 10 Pines Bluff, and another for Tinker Tom, which was to set up his Mila device on the roof. Neither are important in the grand scheme of things, especially since Preston is still stuck in limbo, but the quest reward XP along with the raider killing XP is a nice little boost I just couldn't turn down. For a slightly bigger challenge, I went and faced down Swan again. At this level, I'm still not exactly equipped to fight him one-on-one in a fair fight, but thankfully I brought drugs to help me out. Needless to say, while he still has fun breaking all of my bones, I am able to come out on top thanks to my persistence and drug abuse. Yeah, he hurts a lot, but it's a far cry from how much damage I was taking before. Figured if I can deal with Swan and soak up bullets like nobody's business, then there's really nothing stopping me from using my pin like a paint roller to decorate the walls of the nearby vault in Triggerman Crimson. I banked a critical for Skinny, not that it's required, but may as well come out swinging full force. A few repeated swings allows me to cripple and disarm him, the latter of which is honestly more of a hindrance seeing how frequently people like to block your melee attacks in Fallout 4. I quickly mop up the others, and then after I disarm yet another one and wait around for my action points to refill to make life easier, Nick decides to actually chime in for once and speed things along. Quickly running through all the fluff back at Diamond City, which is looking more and more like Silent Hill by the day, and I'm on the road again to track down Kellogg. Heading west from Diamond City would bring me straight to the fort, but I figured, why do that when I can have some fun with the raiders at the federal ration stockpile? You know, at this point I probably bully them about as much as I do the railroad. I guess the only difference is nobody bats an eye at me steamrolling a bunch of degenerates. After having my fun and fill, I leave, beat up a nearby bear with nothing but a rolling pin, and prove that Muriel canonically has a higher power level than Knight Titus. Finally arriving at the fort, and I'm ready to put the dress to the test. You would think Breaky would be the way to go here, but to be honest, I never really noticed the benefits of the armor penetration. The bleed effect just always seemed to work better. Also, as you can see on screen, the dress is just laughing in the face of the synth's laser weapons. The synths themselves are also getting battered beyond belief and can't really stop me. The real threat in here is those damn turrets right before Kellogg. I am not sure why, but they rip through me in seconds. I don't think I have ever been able to figure out laser turrets in Fallout 4. Sometimes they may as well be water pistols, and other times they are infused with Death Star tech. Next try, and I unintentionally outsmart them as using VATS on the one by the door ends up just pushing me through to the other side. I mean, it works for me. Now for a balanced breakfast. A banked crit followed by a couple more strikes in VATS is always a surefire way to gain the advantage in this fight, and today is no different. Due to me having a few levels in the Big Leagues perk, as I have mentioned before, I obviously have the ability to occasionally disarm opponents. Like usual, this works on Kellogg, which causes his revolver to just kind of float next to him for the remainder of the fight. Not that there was much of that left, mind you, as just a few more whacks to the skull, and he has been cracked like an egg. From there, I can easily deal with the two synths, who I was able to just tank the damage from, once again, thanks to my overpowered dress. After nabbing the brain bits, I decided to see if I could drag Kellogg outside via the elevator, and to my shock, even though elevators are just disguised loading screens, this actually worked. I didn't really have any reason for doing this, so yeah. And of course, now that the brain chip was in hand, this leads to the memory slog segment. I probably should have been paying attention to what the doc was saying, but I was far too invested in my game of Zeta Invaders to really care. Once that was out of the way, it was off to the glowing sea. However, I was having way more fun with this stupid weapon than I would have thought, mostly just down to the sheer novelty of the situation, that I ended up running around doing a bunch of other side activities just for the sake of it. First, I clear out the raiders in Hardware Town. By this stage, I can easily one-shot normal raiders, with the other stronger variants not faring much better. While I'm here, I also preemptively make the green paint, so that I may start and finish the small task for Abbott for some fast experience. Considering how I was frankly incredibly overpowered by this stage, I returned to the point of origin for this run and cleared out the old folks' home of its robotic visitors. The game put little tiny skulls next to their names to inform me that they were out of my league, but this was very much a Rorschach situation, in that I was not trapped in here with them, but they were trapped in here with me. After reassembling their bodies, I spent way longer than I should have just exploring and looting every seemingly useless item from the home. This is my Fallout 4 muscle memory at its finest, by the way. I have quite literally no use for any junk or crafting materials, yet here I am, scouring the floors for aluminium cans and traces of glue I can scrape off the countertops. After I'm finished up here, I figured since I'm in the area, it couldn't hurt to deal with the Deathclaw situation at the Museum of Witchcraft. Fun fact, I only did this quest for the first time like 2 years ago, despite having the game since launch. And it is honestly the most disappointing quest in the game for me. To mini ramble for a moment, NPCs at some point start mentioning to you how something weird and spooky was going down at the museum. Naturally, this intrigues the player, but when you get there, all it is a Deathclaw. Sure, this could have worked if it was the first Deathclaw you'd ever encountered in the game, but let's not kid ourselves, that sure as hell ain't the case for like 99% of players. I guess it all stems from that initial quest with the Minutemen having you face one down within the first hour of the game. Really just lessens the impact of any other ones you see after the fact. Giving you power armor right off the bat was also a choice. Jabbo actually has a really good video on this, you should watch it. I'll link it in the description. Anyway, I beat down the not so frightening claw, retrieve the egg, and then take it back to the nest, and somehow do not get torn to ribbons. Continuing my righteous random slaughter, I wander in and around Satellite Station Olivia, where I teach the raiders just how outclassed they truly are. I even returned the locket to the Abernathy's, just a shame about the whole Minutemen thing. I really need to let that go. Okay, enough stalling, I began heading south for the Great Green Glow. More raiders, gunners, and even a couple of super mutants attempted to slow me down along the way, but not one of them was even mildly successful. This also extends to the ghouls, scorpions, and Deathclaw in the Glowing Sea. I only actually encountered one Deathclaw in the Glowing Sea, if you can believe it, which was of course the one that always spawns outside of Virgil's cave. Some dialogue later, and it's time for the Green Tech climb. I took some of the bits from the rad scorpions I murdered and made them into a steak, which gave me an extra 25 energy resistance. This was overkill. I wish there was more to say, or that they were a little tougher, but as we all know by now, there are only two individuals in this entire building who pose a threat. Those being the Courser and the missile-wielding gunner who is waiting about halfway up the tower, the latter being much more threatening. I actually got super lucky this time with the Missile Maniac, as he was just around the corner at the start of the bridge. This meant I could sprint up, immediately activate VATS, and because I was in range, could take him down in a single swing, while also using the defense boost from VATS to tank the hit. Okay, with them out of the way, now it's time for the Courser. Pathetic. Jokes aside, well-spec'd melee build or not, why is this thing so strong? In both Fallout 3 and New Vegas, it was clearly a joke weapon with low damage. These Commonwealth rolling pins, on the other hand, are more than viable. Hell, the fact you can fully upgrade it right from the start honestly means it may be a better alternative to a lot of other medium-sized one-handed melee weapons. I guess that's the reason why they're so rare. Begrudgingly, I continue aiding the railroad, which leads to building the teleporter with them, and then blending in with the Institute because the faction is so boring they don't even really get their own full unique string of quests leading to the finale. Rather, it's 70% of the Institute path, just with you occasionally talking with a few other people. I ended up fighting my way through the FEV labs at one point as well. Long story short, I got the cure, but completely forgot to give it to Virgil. Whoops! I continue to play undercover for the train team, and I do this by inflicting a lot more blunt force trauma on some nearby raiders. The most interesting thing about this was me being mesmerized by these cables that were just freaking out for seemingly no reason. Oh, and there was also the Brotherhood proving yet again that they may not be as clever as they let on. After that, it's more fine raider pasting before we can send Gabriel back to be decommissioned, and then we can help out the railroad just a bit. For the first time, I actually had a stockpile of weapons to place into the crate for the rebelling synths. My plan was to sell them for caps, but I'd already gotten this far without going on a shopping spree, so figured I may as well put them to good use here. The next few missions kinda flew by with no real issues, especially considering you can just shut down your Courser backup at the start of the Battle of Bunker Hill, and this finishes the quest without you even having to set foot in the settlement. Father is annoyed, but the illusion of choice is very strong today, so you're allowed to keep working with Institute without any setbacks. Next up is Bunker Hill, and you can bet your ass the instant I cleared out the roof, I did the old run and jump off the side of the building straight into the Good Neighbor loading zone. It's really just for the matter of convenience more than anything. The elevator descent is so slow, plus it's not like I can fight back anyway, I would literally just be standing and waiting. Try not to be shocked, but the sentry bots and assaultrons go down way easier than you might think. To be fair, melee weapons can absolutely destroy sentry bots, as the game just glitches out, and for whatever reason, sometimes when you strike them from the front, I'm guessing your weapon partially phases through them, and the game counts it as if you just struck them from behind on their fusion core. You can see it here in VATS, where one of my swings does considerably more damage than the others, even though it's not a crit. Assaultrons on the other hand, well, that's just abuse VATS and find cover when they charge up their death beams. Easy. Just some talky-walkie fetch quests for a bit, so let's skip ahead to the next major mission, that being when the Brotherhood assaults the railroad's base. Thanks to Idiot Savant proccing for me right after finishing Mass Fusion, I got the added cushion of a few more levels. Most importantly, now at level 25, I can take the 3rd rank in the Armourer perk and upgrade my dress to an even higher plane of existence. Now, it grants 90 energy and physical resistance. It helps out a lot for the assault. That said, even with it, I still had to be careful. Rushing in head first was still a surefire way to get deadly invasive laser eye surgery. The first knight who breaks into the base is the toughest, probably due to his choice of weaponry. Thankfully, I do have the rest of the gang here with me, so if for nothing else, I am surrounded by bullet sponges and meat shields. After the knight is put to rest, it's time to, for some reason, directly confront the rest of the Brotherhood attacking the church, head on and alone. The reason that this part ended up being an absolute cakewalk wasn't even down to just how strong the pin had gotten. Again, for whatever reason, just about every single enemy in power armor decided to drop an explosive fat one when they were even remotely threatened. More often than not, this would not only kill the one in the suit, but also completely vaporize any other Brotherhood members in the immediate vicinity. No idea why they kept doing this, but it certainly made my job a whole lot easier. It actually got so bad that at one point the Brotherhood sergeant who was leading the assault did this with his one and only fusion core, forcing him to just have to abandon his suit. I took this as a message from God, seeing how a perfectly good and functioning suit of T60 had just been gifted to me on a golden platter. I even took it back to Sanctuary and fixed it up with the intent to use it. But then I figured, you know what, I've gotten this far without it. I'm like 30 minutes from the end of the run, I may as well see it through. I assaulted the Brotherhood head on with nothing but a sharp wooden object and a green dress that had been out of style for the last 200 years. Pumping myself full of psycho until I was near bursting at the seams probably helped to both increase the insane damage output and the demoralization of the Brotherhood troops as they hear Muriel's famous pre-battle war cry.
Fucking kill!
There was so much blood and death. So much. Best of all, I discovered some new deadly wrestling move where I spun one of the knights around on the ground so hard and fast that his heart gave out. This blistering pace was unfortunately ground to a halt once we made it to the roof. Yes, I continued to mindlessly slaughter to my heart's content, but I can't really do a whole lot against a vertibird. The solution was obvious, if boring. Simply just wait for Deacon to take it out. I tried to offer him some better weapons I'd found around the battlefield, but he was having none of it, unfortunately. After about only 5 minutes, if we're being real, he lands the final shot, and now we can hop into our own barely flying death trap as we end the Brotherhood once and for all. I end up somehow passing the persuasion checks you can just usually walk around if you're careful enough, and 3 bombs later, we are back on the vertibird to safety. And I actually mean that for once. I think this is the first time I've ever done this, and it's not been a crazy light show with all the Brotherhood firing lasers in my general direction. All that leaves is the final assault on Institute, and that was more disappointing than fun. Not just because I was with the railroad or anything like that, but because the rebelling synths didn't use any of the weapons or ammo that I left for them in the crate. Like, I'm pretty sure I left a minigun with hundreds of bullets to go with it, yet you decide to use switchblades and your bare hands instead. I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. Well, because of that blunder, I do all of the heavy lifting, like that wasn't always going to be the case anyway, but I digress. Making sure to bank crits for the stronger and legendary synths certainly helps to speed the culling process along. No point delaying, I dismantle every synth in my path to the reactor, place the bomb, skedaddle out of there to push the big button, decimating the Institute, finishing the game, and proving yes, you can indeed beat Fallout 4 with only a rolling pin. Alright, so in the New Vegas run, I said how I figured it would probably be the easiest, followed by 4, and then 3 would be the most difficult. That was due to New Vegas having some frankly busted melee perks. Well, turns out that didn't mean jack squat, as even without things like Piercing Strike and Super Slam, this little beast of a blunt-bladed beating bat by far led to an easier adventure. It's been about a year since the New Vegas run, so maybe this time next year we do Fallout 3, unintentionally making this a weird 3-year tradition. Regardless, that's going to be the end of this challenge video. If you enjoyed what you saw, consider giving the video a like. If you're interested in more challenges in the future, feel free to subscribe as I try to one of these videos out fairly frequently. My name's Nerbit, stay safe everyone, I'll see y'all in the next video.
Snake! It's not over yet.
Just kidding, they don't get to live.